All right, this is Advanced Math Unit 0, or Unit 6, Objective 0 homework. I'm going to go through this kind of quick because it's a review. Okay, and so in the first assignment here, or the first problem here, I see that I have a linear function. Linear functions use slope. There's nothing here attached to the h, so when the h is missing, we say that it is 0. So missing h is 0. Okay, so that'd be 0, -3, 1, 2, 3, and then I can rise over run. Okay, and then I had several students in my groups repeat the slope because it is a constant rate of change. So I do like to do that myself, but I do look for those 3 main points when looking at graphing, so you don't have to do the additional ones. Okay, when we do our domain, that would be all reals because it goes forever left and right, and all reals goes forever up and down for the range. Okay, here I have absolute value. My HK is -3, -1. Remember, it's always opposite, same. Rise 2, run 1, and we get that V shape. Remember, absolute value is always the V shape. Okay, you can repeat your slope if you wish. It does help find x-intercepts and y-intercepts and all those things more accurately. Again, the domain is all reals. Notice I'm using curvy brackets because we can't touch infinity. Okay, here we have a restricted function. This is where I had most questions and concerns, or at least the first question. Okay, so normally you would just graph the V. Okay, I have HK at 0, 0, right one up one, left one up one. Awesome, okay? But here, we're not going to trace the whole thing, okay? So I have a V, and the restriction tells me to trace just part of that V. Okay, so if it says greater than or equal to 0, I go to where x is 0, which would be here in the middle, and this means I want all the x values bigger. And so over here, I go 1, 2, 3. This side is much bigger. These are all smaller. So I would trace this side here to here, and this is actually the only part of the graph that is needing to be graphed. Okay, so when I look at this, I see I have a starting point here, not over here, because this is not in that restriction. So it starts at 0 and goes forever to the right. The lowest is 0, and it goes up forever. Okay, so this one here is very, very similar. Okay, I have my restriction, but it's a linear. Okay, so I don't have that V reflection. The restriction on it is the same as the V, so again, I go to that 0, I trace everything to the right, and I can see that I end up with the exact same graph when the restriction is applied. Okay, which is kind of a nice little thing. Okay, and that little red dot is just from my doc cam. Okay, next one here, I have a quadratic. I need to fix that typo. I'm gonna forget. Let's see. Here, Unit 6, worksheet 0. Sorry guys, if I don't fix it right now, it won't get fixed because I keep saying I'm gonna fix it and I don't, so. Okay, so file, save as. I'm going to do that one in 2020. It will be an improved copy. Okay. All right, so here we go. I have a quadratic. My HK is 1, 2. My stretch is right one up 2. Oh. Okay, no restriction this time. Infinity, infinity, but my range starts here at 2 and then goes up forever. Okay, this one, number 6, is the next one where I had the most number of questions. I graphed the first one. Okay, and so that's like f of x equals that. So if I think of that, my HK is -2, 0. The stretch is going downward. I want everything to the left of x is 0, and x is 0 right here. Okay, so I need to go all the way up to the y-axis. You could guesstimate, but we don't need to do that. So to find this point on the axis, we plug in 0 for x. So if I go f of 0, then I get negative 0 plus 2 squared. 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4, and I end up with negative 4 for my y value. Okay. Put a little negative 4 so I remember why. Okay, and so then I want all of that. Then for the other side here, this is a quadratic in factored form. So this is my x-intercepts are the opposite, so that'd be 1, 0, 3, 0. Okay, you could get fancy and you would know that if it's a quadratic, a U shape, then I'd have to undo the stretch. So if I go right one, down one, I'm going to get my vertex. Most of you aren't going to see that pattern. That's okay, so you don't have to have that point there. But I do need a point on the 0 again, so this time I'm going to plug in the 0 into this equation. That'd be 0 minus 1 times 0 minus 3. That'd give me negative 1 times negative 3, which is a positive 3. Okay, now I did make a mistake, and I did this in 2 out of 3 of my groups. Notice here I have a less than, this one here I have a greater than or equal to. That means that I need to have an open circle on one of them and a filled in on the other. So this one does not have an equal to, so I'm going to use an open circle. Okay. I'm going to put a little dot of white out there in the middle just so that it visually looks right on my answer key, okay? Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Domain, it goes forever to the left. It looks like it stops here, but there's an x value right there that is 0. So it goes all the way up to 0. And then it starts at 0 again and keeps going. So that's infinity, infinity. It goes down forever and up forever. There are some duplicate y values, but that's okay because they're all covered. Okay. And number 7, it says explain why the graphs of these two are identical. And that has to do with each one of them involves a linear component, which means slope is used. And so since they have the same HK and slope can be used, they would give identical graphs when you start at that symmetry point on your absolute value. Okay, so explain why. Because they have the same HK and slope. Okay. Also, it's at the vertex where the linear is, that linear absolute value is 2 linear parts. Okay. Okay. Good, good, good. So the next part here, I'm going to sketch my graph. I'm going to do it in 2 ways. So in factored form, I would just literally factor that. And so x times x is x squared. 3 times 1 is 3. I need more positives. Okay, if I check that, that's 3x and negative x, which gives me positive 2x. So I can do my x-intercepts now. Those would be negative 3, 0 and 1, 0. Okay, I'm now going to do my vertex form. Vertex form is when you complete the square. Some of you have formulas that you learned in Math 3, but in my experience, those of you who use the formulas are not remembering when you get to advanced math how to do these. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. So vertex form is where I have ax plus h squared plus k, and actually this would be a minus sign. Okay, and so to make it look like that, if I have f of x equals x squared plus 2x minus 3, I want to temporarily get the negative 3 out of the way because it's probably related to the k. So I'm going to add it to both sides. Okay, then I know I want this to be a perfect square. Okay, which means I'd have an identical pair, something times itself. Okay, so I can tell part of that pair already would be x and x. Okay, because x times x is x squared. But then I have to figure out what this third term is. And so I need something times itself. Okay, so it needs to be a square number so that when I distribute, or when I FOIL there and there, when I add them together, I get 2x. So essentially, it's half this number. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then I can see that, oh, that would give me 2x, or sorry, that would give me 1x and 1x, and when I add those, I get 2x. Okay, so liking that a lot. Okay, that'd be a +1. But when I FOIL it, okay, so yes, I do get my x squared, but I also get an extra 1 times 1, which is 1. So I have to add that 1 to both sides. 3 plus 1 is 4. And then I would subtract that on both sides. And that one gives me my vertex form. The vertex form is very helpful because it gives the vertex of a parabola. Factored form is really nice because it gives the intercepts of the parabola. So 1, -4, 1 and 2, 3, 4. Okay, I can use my stretch, which is right 1, up 1, left 1, up 1. And now I can draw my nice parabola. Okay, so my domain is all reals and my range is all reals. My y-intercept here you can see is -3, so -3. Okay, my relative minimum is my hk, so that would be -1, -4. And the average rate of change is the slope for that part. So I'm going to find my different values here. So I'm going to use my slope form. Okay, so I would plug in this for my x1, this for my x2, and find my y2 and y1. Okay, so f of -1 gives me -1 squared plus 2 times -1 minus 3. That's 1 minus 2 minus 3, which is -4. Okay, which I can see that -1, -4, that is correct there. Okay, so that means that my this is my y2 number, or my y1 number. So to find my y2, I'm going to plug in the 2. And so that would be 2 squared plus 2 times 2 minus 3. That's 4 plus 4 minus 3, or 8 minus 3, which is 5, and that's my y2. Okay, so then my slope or rate of change comes from y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2 is 5, y1 is -4. x2 is 2, x1 is -1, and when I subtract negatives, I'm actually adding, or essentially adding, so it's going to be 9 over 3, which is just a slope of 3. Okay, I'm going to turn the page, and I am going over this pretty quick. I did invite students to be in my group in class, so that's why this is running so fast, because there were lots of opportunities in class today. All right, so I have -3 absolute value of x. It's saying that I want to subtract 4 from f of x, and this is f of x here. So it's literally just going to be like this, okay? So that means I take this function, I'm just moving it down 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's negative. Okay, so I told my groups you didn't actually have to do the domain and range, okay? But it's totally easy. That would be -infinity to infinity. Range would be -infinity all the way up to -4, staple bracket. Okay, this one I'm inserting this into x, so that would be -3 times x minus 4. Absolute value, that means it's moving at right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slope is still downward. My domain is still all reals. And my range is -infinity to 0 this time. Okay, here, this just means I'm making the negative. So negative of -3 absolute value of x. So negative makes that a positive. So this will be +3 absolute value of x. Okay, domain is all reals. Range starts at 0, goes up forever. Okay, next one we have a linear function. I'm going to insert this in for x and then add 1. Okay, so that would be 3 times 2. This is a placeholder. So that would be x plus 2 where the x is, and then the plus 1 goes on the outside. So that would be -2, 1. And then I use rise over run, so rise 3, run 2. I can repeat that slope if I wish. Okay, connect. Okay, domain for linears with no restrictions are always all reals, and so is the range. Okay, here I'm plugging in -x for x, so that would be 3/2 times -x. I can actually multiply them. When I do, I'll just get -3/2x. Okay, so hk is 0, 0. Now I'm going to go down 3, right 2. And I could repeat the slope, but I'm trying to be quick because it's Friday and I want to go home. Okay. Here I'm doing 3 things. I'm inserting this in there. Okay, so that's x plus 3. I'm putting a +2 on the outside and the negative on the outside. Okay, so that would be a -3 up 2. And then it's down 3, right 2. Sometimes I forget because I just like having that repeated slope so much that I forget I'm in a hurry. I forget I want to be home. Okay, next one. I'm substituting in a negative in for x squared. So that would be -x squared. I can actually square that. I'm just going to get x squared. Okay, so domain is all reals. Range starts at 0, goes up forever. Okay, here, plugging that in, those two are on the outside, so that'd be -x plus 2 squared plus 1. Right 2 up 1. Okay, it's a stretch that's going downward. Okay, so domain is still all reals. Range is coming from the bottom all the way up to a positive. Uh-oh, I went up too high. Gosh darn it. Okay, so it should have been here, giving me these intercepts instead. Okay, so I'm gonna have to fix that. It's because I knew that one. So, anyway, my bad. That's what I get for writing in pen. Started doing that for the camera, but now I just like it because my work's all nice and dark. Except every once in a while, actually you guys know in class I need a lot of whiteout. Okay. Anyway, I will fix that. Oh, I better erase that too. Also, that needs to become a 1. Okay. Next. Okay. Here again, I'm plugging in the x negative for the x, but when I plug in a -x, I square that. I'm going to get a positive x, so it'll be +x plus 2. The 2 is the k, not the h. Okay. So that would be -infinity, +infinity, nope, not -infinity. Gosh darn it, it starts at 2 and goes up forever. Okay, so I gotta fix that also. Okay. So that'll be a staple bracket 2, comma, then with the infinity. Okay, so I am going to stop my video here, even though I messed those up. So, but my graphs are correct, and that was the biggest part that I was looking at. Okay, I will post my finished solutions shortly.